Hi, I'm Angela Birchall. Welcome to part one of Points to Ponder on Portraiture. To me, portraiture is a bit of a Marmite-like subject. People either desperately want to try their hand at it, or they'll run a mile from even attempting it. I think portraiture is probably one of the most satisfying, frustrating and difficult subject areas. It's so satisfying when you actually create a portrait and you know you've captured the likeness that you really want to. It's incredibly satisfying when someone comes along, looks at the portrait and knows instantly who the subject is. My sister came into the studio the other day and she was looking around and I've not seen that portrait of Benedict Cumberbatch before. Yes. It's also incredibly frustrating when you're working on a portrait and it's nearly there, 95% you've captured it, but there's just something somewhere that's just not right and you just can't put your finger on it. But when you do achieve it, then that is so satisfying, and it's a big part of the satisfaction of actually overcoming the issues that you've faced actually creating that portrait, getting that look, that character of it. And in future ones of these Points to Ponder on Portraiture, I'll be sharing some of the tips that I use for actually working out what still needs doing, what needs correcting and adjusting. Okay, another one of the difficult areas of portraiture, which people often don't even think about, is actually defining what is a portrait. It's a question I've asked students many times because I know that it'll get their creative juices flowing, and I also know there's no one correct answer to that question. There has to be something that you capture in that portrait that turns it from being a face to a portrait of an individual. And as you can see from my work that I'm still referring to, whether it's people or pets, they still have that personality that you were trying to capture and bring out in that portrait. If I ask students that question, they're going to say to me, it has to be accurate. Yes and no. It has to be accurate if you're wanting to produce a realistic looking portrait. And it has to be accurate from the point of view of very careful observation on your part and being able to depict exactly what you see, not necessarily what you think is there, but exactly what you see. We often look at a face, or we'll describe someone's facial features, and we focus on the eyes and the mouth. And I'll show you an example here of what happens when our left brain particularly focuses on the eyes and mouth. We draw them actually bigger than they are in reality, and it takes on a cartoon-like appearance. This is the size these facial features should be drawn at. We know, however, that we do get cartoon-like portraits, or the cartoonists use them. They are exaggerated, but what they have is excellent observation of the specific characteristics of that person, and they exaggerate those characteristics. So it is a cartoon, but it's still a portrait of the person that they are cartooning. That does take just as much accurate observation as doing a realistic portrait, but the outcome is very different. Some students will talk about a portrait having a real photographic likeness. Does it have to be photographic? It has to capture the qualities of that face, but does it have to be photographic? Well, just look at this quartet of pictures of Michael Jackson. Each one of them slightly less what you would call realistic than the first one, but still instantly recognisable as that particular subject. I've often asked students, does it have to be flattering? Well, the answer is if you're doing it for a present or as a commission, you're probably better being on the flattering side, or at least the realistic side. However, not all portraits have been identified as flattering to their subject, and I'll include a few here of the person who's probably had more portraits painted of her than anyone else, Her Majesty the Queen. And I'll leave you to decide whether you think these portraits are flattering, or even whether you would actually consider them to be a portrait of Her Majesty. So, your first Portraiture challenge. Decide on a person or pet whose portrait you would like to portray. Get some photographs of them. Look at those photographs from the point of view of which ones actually capture that special essence and the characteristics that you think of when you think of that pet or person. And a hint for you is, obviously, the better you know the pet or person, the better you will be able to work out which photograph actually does portray them the best. How many times do we look at photographs, particularly of ourselves, and go, oh, that doesn't look like me? So get a photograph that you think sums up the characteristics of that person or pet, and then have a go at drawing or painting it. Okay, now a few hints for you. When you start your portrait, you might work on a rough shape of the face, but when you start putting in details, look carefully. Portraiture, like every other aspect of drawing and painting, really does require good observation, but portraiture in particular. As a minimum rule of thumb, look at the individual section that you're about to make the appropriate mark of on your canvas or paper. Look at that section on the photograph for at least 3 times longer than you spend putting that mark or brushstroke on your paper or canvas. Okay, so often people are spending so much time looking at the pretty marks that they're making, they're not looking at the subject, and unless you've got a photographic memory, you're not going to be able to carry the details of that picture across to your painting or paper. Okay, so look at individual little tiny marks, whether it's a corner of the eye, the ear, the hairline, whatever it is. That little section, really stare at it, fix it in your mind, and then flick over to your canvas or paper and make that mark. And then when you've made that mark, come back and look and look and look and check. You know those puzzles that you used to get with Spot the Difference? If you flick your eyes backwards and forwards, you will see whether an angle is like that instead of like that, or it's just a little bit too curved up and curved round. So double check every mark before you make your next one. And when you make your next one, make it in relation to what is above and below and beside in the photograph. So the edge of the eye is in line with the nose or the nostril or the side of the mouth, whatever it is. Remember, it's only Picasso that can get away with putting the eye on the wrong side of the face. Okay, so when you've had a go at doing that, please come back into the chat room and share your thoughts, your discoveries, the things you struggled with, the things you're really pleased about achieving. And if you really want to, we'd love it if you shared your photograph. However, one of my rules is you never have to show and tell. Tell yes, but you don't have to show. But if you don't show us, even if you don't show us, keep that portrait, sign and date it, and then you will be able to use that as a benchmark for your future progress in these future portraiture sessions. Okay, so have a go, have fun, and keep it creative.